Hopefully the man on the line is going to say that his team can make the playoffs. Right now, the LA Kings are only 4 points out of a playoff spot in the Western Conference, and the man who is the architect of the franchise that put it all together is the GM Dean Lombardi, who joins us now. It's Bill and Rob. How are you, Dean?
Hi, Billy. How are you?
We're doing fantastic, thank you. Let me ask you seriously. Are even you surprised at the fact that your LA Kings are this close to a playoff spot at this stage of the season? Are they that much ahead of schedule, or is this where you saw them?
Well, you get asked that all the time, Billy, when you're in the building process, and I was asked that at the beginning of the year. But one thing I learned, from some pretty smart hockey people when I started in San Jose and built it the same way through the draft. You just have to try and get better every day. And I think sometimes when you're in that stage where you're trying to put young players in your lineup, it's very dangerous to put maybe unrealistic expectations on them as individuals and as a team, and you just got to focus on making them better every day. Now, that being said, I think we are much further along than I anticipated. But if you had asked me in August whether Drew Doughty would come in and play 25 minutes, I would have said, you're probably crazy, or that Jonathan Quick would have emerged this quickly, the month he had last month. Those are just things that, they're talented individuals, but to think that they're going to perform at that level, I don't know if any smart hockey person can, make that type of prediction all the time. But I think, one of the things certainly, and Murph, Billy, he's given the team a lot of structure. I think he's very underrated in terms of the amount of time he spends one-on-one with players. He's at the rink at 6 in the morning, is the last to leave, and he's been really good, not only giving them structure, but also guiding them as people and spending that one-on-one time. And we've made a lot of strides, but we've certainly got a long way to go.
Hey, Dean, Rob Simpson. I saw an interview last night with Terry Murray on the Flyers telecast with Coatsy, and he brought up the fact that is his couple things in his coaching career. He's matured, he's more patient, he has more confidence in what he does. But he said his favorite thing, and this falls just exactly in line with what you said, he loves teaching the younger players, he loves being out there and being an instructional coach. And part of that, and this kind of coincides with an article I read about your team, is with so many young players, you have to teach them how to play the defensive game in the National Hockey League, because defense wins championships, as they say. And how much of that just kind of falls in place with Terry Murray and the fact that your team has played well defensively with all of these young guys? How much is that factored into you guys being ahead of your pace, so to speak?
Well, I think it's a big part of it, and certainly that was one of Murph's fortes, was being defensively responsible, and I think that goes with any good team. I don't care how good you are, you've got to play well defensively. And last year our goals against was atrocious, and it was the one thing that we had set out to do, that we have to make some inroads here and cut the goals against down. But I think the other thing that really gets underestimated today, I do spend a lot of time out on the road involved with the junior players and things, and there's also an obligation for a coach in this situation to teach them to be men and teach them to be teammates. And that is something you can't always diagram on a board and show it on a video. And that's kind of what I was getting at, that this coach spearheads it. I think everybody has an obligation to get to know these kids as people and push them in the right direction in terms of being a teammate and growing up as a man. You're dealing with 19, 20-year-old kids, 22, 23 years old, and to think that giving them, $4 million is automatically going to make them grow up, it works the other way. And I think the only way you can do that is you just got to spend time with them. It's no different than raising your own kids. And so I think the defensive part of it is certainly huge, but I just learned through the building process that you can't underestimate those intangibles that you hope you can guide them to become teammates and eventually winners.
Dean, you might even be able to put the notion of draft picks into that intangible, because you don't even know who they're going to be yet for the upcoming draft. Last year's draft, you had more picks in the first 3 rounds because of all of the shrewd deals that you put together. You had more picks than any other team at the draft. Size it up for this year. If I'm not mistaken, you have more than your share of picks coming up for this June's draft, do you not?
Yeah, we've got 13 picks again in this year's draft. And, that was just one of the things that when I told the ownership in L.A. when I took this job, I said, what I see here is we have no young defensemen and no young goaltending, and you're going to have to go back to the draft table. And I know that the game plan has changed to a degree with free agency now, and certainly free agency and trades are a big part of building a team, but you got to position yourself to be able to do those things. And just going out and getting free agents, is not going to do it. And you're not going to have the assets to trade if you want to make deals if you don't draft well. And, certainly that was the MO the last couple of years. We kept, acquiring draft picks. And, kids like Simmons and Moeller, they come along quicker than we thought, and they're playing for us right now. But I don't care. I always go back and, you look at the Yankees. And the Yankees had great success, but the core of that team, whether it was Jeter, Rivera, and Williams, and Posada, they all come through their system. And when the Yankees tried to do it the other way, no matter how much money they had, there was a disaster. And so even if you've got all the money in the world, it still starts at the draft table before you can then, get the free agents that fit and then also make the trades. Because I don't care. General managers, you're not going to take anybody over the ropes. Most deals, then 99% of the time, they're fair deals, and you're not going to get anything for nothing. And unless you draft well, you're not going to have anything to trade.
And you had a great draft record with San Jose, built that franchise through the draft, as you touched on. With the Kings right now, top 5 Central Scouting Bureau at the midway point had 4 of the top 5 are North American centermen, and then you have a Swedish defenseman thrown in there at number 2. Do you try to angle for that D-man? Are you kind of leaning that way, or do you try to figure out what maybe a centerman, hypothetically, we're talking hypotheticals.
Hey, Dean, go ahead, because what plays into that is the trade deadline. So before we let you go, we're going to find out if you're going to be a buyer, a seller, or a bystander. So how about Rob's issue with where do you go in the draft?
Okay, there's 2 questions.
Yeah, well, starting in the draft, if you had, what position do you still want to try to build through the draft?
Well, I think that was always my MO in San Jose, and I think it certainly was looking at what I did in L.A. in terms of whether it was Hickey and Tubert and Voinov and Doughty and these guys. I think we're not a sport when you draft 18-year-olds that you can draft by position.